My body's too large, human, I'm not fit to love. But he held her tight. Zara walked slowly through the dense forest, the trees towering above her. Her feet pressed into the ground, sending vibrations through the earth. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. At over 20 feet tall, Zara was a giant by any standard. Her blue-gray skin shimmered in the light of the twin moons overhead, and her sharp, glowing eyes scanned the darkened woods around her. She had always felt out of place in the world, but tonight, the feeling was worse than ever. The forest was quiet except for the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. Zara's heart felt heavy, the familiar ache gnawing at her chest. It was a feeling she had known for as long as she could remember. The world around her seemed to be made for beings much smaller than she was, beings that didn't tower above everyone else, whose every step didn't shake the ground beneath them. She often wondered how different her life would be if she were just like them. If she were smaller, softer, more delicate, but that was impossible. She had been born a Volgrar, a race known for their immense size and strength. In her society, those traits were both a blessing and a curse. The Volgrar were a proud people, and their strength made them great warriors and protectors, but it also made them lonely. Zara had never known love, and she was certain she never would. How could anyone love her when she was so different from everyone else? How could she ever fit into a world made for smaller beings when she felt like a monster? As she walked deeper into the forest, her thoughts began to drift. She thought about her past, about the many years she had spent trying to fit in. She had tried to make friends, tried to find someone who would accept her for who she was, but no one ever had. Her size was always too much for people to handle. They admired her strength, but they feared it too. She had never been able to escape the feeling that she was something to be feared, something to be avoided. Zara stopped walking and looked up at the stars. She had always loved the stars. They were beautiful, distant, and mysterious, just like her. She wished she could be like them, something so far away that no one could judge her, something that no one could hurt. A soft sound broke her reverie. She turned quickly, her keen senses picking up a faint movement in the bushes. Zara's large frame tensed, her muscles ready to spring into action. She had been alone for so long that even the smallest noise made her feel on edge. But to her surprise, it was not a threat that emerged from the bushes. Instead, it was a human, a small, fragile-looking man. His clothes were torn and he looked exhausted, his face covered in dirt and sweat. His eyes widened when he saw her, and for a moment they just stared at each other, the giantess and the human, both surprised by the encounter. The human was the first to speak. Are you real?" he asked, his voice shaky. Zara's heart skipped a beat. She had heard stories about humans, but she had never encountered one herself. They were a rare sight on her home planet, often coming as visitors or diplomats. She had heard they were fragile, delicate beings, unlike her own kind. And yet here one stood before her, looking up at her as if she were a ghost. She nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. "I am Zara," she said, her voice deep and calm, though her words seemed to shake the air around them. "Who are you?" The man swallowed, his fear slowly turning into curiosity. "Liam," he replied. I didn't expect to find anyone out here, especially not someone like you." "You're huge." Zara flinched at his words. She had heard them before, but they never stopped hurting. "I know," she muttered softly. "I'm not like you, I don't fit in." Liam's gaze softened, his fear replaced by something else, sympathy maybe. "I don't think it's about fitting in. It's about finding where you belong, and who you belong with." Zara looked down at him, the words sinking into her. She had always felt out of place, like she didn't belong anywhere. She had resigned herself to the fact that she would never find anyone who could accept her as she was. But this man, this human, was different. He didn't look at her with fear. He didn't see her size as something to be afraid of. He saw her. "You're too small," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "How could someone like you ever accept someone like me?" Liam stepped closer, his movements cautious but steady. "I don't think size matters when it comes to who you are," he said. "I think it's about the heart. And from what I can see, you've got a heart bigger than anyone else I've met." Zara's chest tightened at his words. For the first time in a long while, she felt something stir inside her. It was a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years. Hope. Could it be possible that someone could love her despite her size? Could Liam really see past her towering frame and see her for who she truly was? I don't know if I can love anyone," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I deserve love." Liam shook his head. Everyone deserves love, Zara. You don't have to be small or perfect. You just have to be you. The sincerity in his voice made Zara's heart ache. She had never heard anyone speak to her like this before. It was a truth she had always known, but had never been able to accept. She had spent so long hiding behind the walls she had built around herself, afraid of what others would think of her, afraid of being rejected. But here was Liam, offering her something she had never thought possible, acceptance. Zara took a deep breath, her eyes still locked on Liam's. For the first time in her life, she felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in years, hope for something more. She reached out a trembling hand, her enormous fingers hovering just above Liam's shoulder. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled up at her, his eyes full of kindness and understanding. Slowly, as if he were proving a point, he stepped into her hand, allowing her to cradle him in her palm. He was small compared to her, but in that moment he felt just as important as she did. "Thank you," Zara whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for seeing me." Liam didn't say anything in response. He simply smiled and reached up, placing a hand on her enormous finger. It was a simple gesture, but to Zara, it meant everything. As she held him close, feeling the warmth of his touch, Zara finally allowed herself to believe in something she had long since abandoned. Love. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she belonged. Zara sat quietly by the edge of the forest, watching as the moonlight filtered through the trees. She had never been able to relax in such a peaceful moment. Her mind was always filled with doubts and worries. Tonight, though, things felt different. The weight of the past few days was heavy on her shoulders, but there was something else there now, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel before, hope. She glanced down at the small figure resting in her hand. Liam was asleep, his small form curled up in the palm of her hand. He looked so peaceful, so at ease. Zara felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had never thought someone so tiny could make her feel so safe. It was a feeling she had never imagined for herself. She ran her fingers gently over his body, careful not to harm him. The soft texture of his skin beneath her fingertips felt delicate, but there was something strong about him, too. Something that had drawn her to him from the very first moment they met. She had expected him to be afraid of her, most beings were, but Liam was different. He had looked at her not with fear, but with curiosity and kindness. Zara let out a slow breath. She hadn't realized how lonely she had been until she met him. Her people, the Volgrar, were strong and proud, but their size and strength set them apart from others. Zara had never fit into that world. She wasn't like the others, not in the way they wanted her to be. She had always been told that her size was a burden. It had kept her from making friends, from finding someone to love. But now, with Liam, things felt different. She wasn't sure if it was possible, but a small part of her wanted to believe that he could love her despite her size. She shifted slightly, trying not to disturb Liam, but her movements were always a bit clumsy. Her body was so large, and every action seemed to take up more space than it should. She had always hated that about herself, how she took up so much room in the world. Her size made her feel out of place, like she was always in the way. She had spent years trying to fit in, trying to shrink herself, but no matter how hard she tried, it never worked. But with Liam, she didn't feel that way. He hadn't once asked her to be smaller or different. He had accepted her as she was, and that terrified her. What if she couldn't keep up with him? What if she hurt him without meaning to? He was so small, so fragile compared to her. He had a human's body, and Zara's size alone could crush him without even realizing it. She had been careful, but the fear still lingered. She was a giant, and he was a human. The two of them were from worlds that were too different, too far apart. Zara shook her head, trying to push those thoughts away. She had been thinking about these things for days now, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt like she was fooling herself. There was no way a human could ever love her. How could he? He was so small and delicate, and she was a massive, towering creature who didn't belong anywhere. She didn't know how to be with someone like him, how to show him that she cared without overwhelming him. She was too large, too strong. Her emotions, her body, everything about her felt too much. She looked down at Liam again. He was still asleep, his breathing steady and soft. He looked so peaceful, so unaware of the storm of emotions swirling inside her. She didn't want to wake him, but she knew she needed to talk. She needed to say the things that had been on her mind for so long. "Hey, Liam," she whispered softly, unsure if he could hear her. "Are you awake?" Liam stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open. He blinked up at her, still groggy from sleep. He smiled faintly when he saw her looking at him. "Hey, Zara, what's up?" Zara hesitated, unsure how to begin. She had so much she wanted to say, but it was hard to put into words. Her feelings were tangled up inside her, messy and confusing. She wasn't sure how to explain them to him. "I don't know if I can do this," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can be with you." Liam looked up at her with a furrowed brow sitting up in her palm. "What do you mean?" Zara let out a deep breath, her large hand trembling slightly. "I'm too big," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm not like you. I'm too much, too strong, too everything. And I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm going to hurt you, that I'm going to be too much for you to handle. You're so small, and I don't know how to love someone like you without hurting you." Liam's expression softened as he listened to her. He didn't look afraid, not even a little. "Zara, I don't care how big you are," he said firmly. "I care about who you are. You're not too much for me. You're not a burden. I've never met anyone like you before, and I'm not afraid of you. I want to be with you no matter what." Zara's heart skipped a beat at his words. He wasn't afraid of her. He really meant it. She looked down at him, trying to understand his words. But it didn't make sense. How could he not be afraid? How could he want to be with her when she was so different, so overwhelming? "You really mean that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You're not afraid of me, not of my size, not of what I could do to you?" Liam nodded, his eyes full of sincerity. "No, Zara, I'm not afraid. I know you're different, but that's what makes you special. I want to be with you. I don't care about how big you are. You're not too much for me." Zara blinked, her chest tightening with a mix of emotions. She had never heard anyone say anything like that to her before. It was all too much to process, but for the first time in her life, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: acceptance. She wasn't too much. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a burden. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you for seeing me." Liam smiled up at her, reaching out a hand to gently touch her massive finger. "I see you, Zara, and I want to be with you no matter what." Tears welled up in Zara's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. She didn't know what the future held, but in this moment, for the first time in her life, she felt like she might just have a chance at something more, something real. She didn't know if she was ready to fully accept what Liam was offering, but she wanted to try. For him. For herself, she gently cupped Liam in her hand, holding him close to her heart, as if to keep him safe. And for the first time in her life, Zara felt like she wasn't so alone anymore. Zara stood at the edge of the forest, watching the sun rise over the horizon. The light from the twin moons had faded, and the stars began to disappear as the first rays of sunlight touched the land. She felt a strange stillness inside her, a calm she had not known in a long time. The feeling was foreign, almost unsettling, but she welcomed it. It was as if a weight she hadn't known she was carrying had lifted off her shoulders. Liam had stayed with her throughout the night. He had not once asked to leave or expressed fear about her size. Instead, he had held her hand as she tried to express everything she had kept hidden for so long. The fear, the loneliness, the doubts. His presence had been like a steady anchor, grounding her as she shared parts of herself she never thought she could. His acceptance felt like a lifeline she had reached out for but never believed she could find. She glanced down at him, still asleep in the palm of her hand. He was small, so small compared to her, but in the quiet of the morning he seemed to fill the space around them. His chest rose and fell with each breath, a soft and steady rhythm that calmed her nerves. Zara couldn't understand it. How could someone so small, so fragile make her feel so safe? How could someone so different from her see her in a way she never thought anyone could? Zara gently stroked his hair with one of her fingers, marveling at how delicate he was in comparison to her. She had been so careful, so afraid of hurting him, but he had never flinched. He had never pulled away. Instead, he had welcomed her touch. It was a feeling she couldn't quite put into words, but it was something she didn't want to lose. For once, she didn't feel like she was a monster. For once, she felt like she was enough. The sound of footsteps in the distance broke her thoughts. Zara's ears perked up, her senses immediately on alert. She had been so caught up in her thoughts that she hadn't noticed the approaching presence. Her heart raced, her muscles tensing. She shifted slightly, trying to hide Liam from view, but it was too late. A group of Volgrar warriors emerged from the trees, their large figures blocking the sunlight. Zara's breath caught in her throat. The warriors were members of her tribe, but they were not here for a friendly visit. She could feel the weight of their presence. They were here for a reason, and Zara knew it had nothing to do with kindness. "Zara!" One of them, a male warrior named Kor, called out. His voice was deep and commanding, filled with authority. "What are you doing here, alone, with a human?" Zara stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. She had always kept to herself, staying away from her people's judgment, but now there was nowhere to hide. She couldn't let them see Liam, she couldn't risk them hurting him. She had to protect him, even if it meant confronting her tribe. "I'm not alone," Zara replied, her voice firm, "and this human is not a threat to us." Kor's eyes narrowed, his gaze shifting from Zara to the small human in her hand. "A human? Why would you protect one of them?" "They are weak, they are nothing like us." Zara's heart tightened at his words. She had heard the same thing her whole life. Her people saw humans as insignificant, as nothing more than fragile beings who couldn't survive in their harsh world. But to Zara, Liam was more than that. He was strong, strong in ways her people would never understand. His strength came from his heart, from his willingness to care, to love, despite all the odds. That was more than Zara could say for herself. "I'm protecting him because he's important to me," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I won't let you harm him." Kor stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over Zara. "You are weak if you think a human can be important," he said coldly. "You're wasting your time, Zara. You belong with us, with your own kind." Zara's chest tightened. She had always known her people would never accept her choices. They would never understand why she felt the way she did. But Liam had shown her something different. He had shown her a side of herself she didn't even know existed. He had made her believe that she wasn't just a giant, a freak, a monster. She was something more. She was worthy of love. "I belong with Liam," Zara said, her voice gaining strength. "I'm not the same as you. I don't fit into your world, and I don't want to. I want something different, something more." Kor looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You'll regret this, Zara. You can't deny your nature forever. You are Volgrar. You are meant to be strong, to rule. You cannot belong with a human." Zara stood her ground, refusing to back down. "I don't want to rule, I don't want to be feared, I just want to be accepted for who I am, and Liam accepts me." Kor's expression darkened, but before he could respond, another voice broke in. "Enough, Kor." The new voice came from a woman, a member of Zara's tribe named Lyra. She was tall, like all Volgrar, but not as imposing as Kor. Her presence was calm and steady, and she stepped forward with a grace that Zara admired. "Kor," Lyra said again, this time with more authority. "You don't speak for all of us. Zara has every right to choose her path. Just because she is different doesn't mean she is weak. We all have our own strengths." Kor scowled, clearly unhappy, but he stepped back, grumbling under his breath. Lyra turned to Zara, her eyes softening. "I understand," Lyra said gently. "You found something that brings you peace. I won't interfere." Zara blinked, surprised by Lyra's words. She had never expected anyone from her tribe to stand up for her, especially not after everything she had been through. It felt like a small victory, one that she hadn't expected to come so soon. "Thank you," Zara whispered. Lyra nodded, her gaze flicking to Liam in Zara's hand. "Take care of him, Zara. He's lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have him." With that, Lyra turned and walked away, her warriors following her in silence. Zara watched them leave, her heart still pounding, but now there was a sense of relief. She had faced her people, faced their judgment, and she had stood her ground. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had made a choice that was truly hers. She looked down at Liam, still sleeping peacefully in her hand. His presence was a comfort, a reminder of the love and acceptance she had found. Maybe she wasn't meant to be like everyone else. Maybe she didn't need to fit into their world. Maybe, just maybe, she had found her place in the universe. And that place, she realized, was with him. Zara carefully set Liam down on a soft patch of grass beside her, making sure he was comfortable. As he stirred and began to wake up, Zara smiled down at him. He looked up at her with a sleepy smile, his eyes bright with warmth. "Good morning," he said softly. Zara bent down, her heart swelling with emotion. "Good morning, Liam." And for the first time, she felt truly at home. Zara stood in the clearing, watching Liam as he gathered firewood. The morning had passed in a quiet rhythm, the world around them still and peaceful. She felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in a long time. After the confrontation with her people, she expected to feel fear or regret, but instead, there was only a gentle warmth in her chest. It was as if the weight of her past had been lifted, if only for a moment. She had never imagined that she would find herself in a place like this, standing with a human, feeling something she hadn't thought possible. Love. It seemed so strange to her, so out of place in her world, but here, in this moment, it felt real. It felt like something worth fighting for. Liam looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet smile. The sun filtered through the trees, casting a soft light on his face, and Zara's heart swelled. It was hard to believe that someone like him could see past her size, past her differences, and still want to be with her. But he did. He wanted her, and that thought made everything else fade into the background. "Zara, do you think the others will come back?" Liam asked, his voice steady but filled with concern. Zara sighed, her gaze shifting to the forest around them. She could feel the tension in the air. The warriors of her tribe had left, but she knew they hadn't given up on convincing her to return to them. Kor's words still echoed in her mind, reminding her that her people would never accept her choices. But there was a part of her, a part she hadn't fully acknowledged until now, that didn't care. She didn't belong with them, not anymore. She belonged here with Liam. "I don't know," she said softly, "but I won't go back. Not unless they can accept me for who I am, for who I've chosen to be, and I won't ask you to change for them either." Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I understand. I'm not asking you to change, Zara. I just want you to be happy." Zara felt a lump form in her throat. His words were simple, but they carried so much meaning. She had spent her entire life trying to fit into a world that didn't understand her. But now, with Liam, she was beginning to see that maybe she didn't need to fit into anyone's world. Maybe she could make her own. "I don't know how to do this," Zara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to love someone without pushing them away. I don't know how to be what you need." Liam's eyes softened, and he took a step toward her, closing the distance between them. "Zara, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be yourself. That's all I need, all I've ever needed." Zara swallowed, her heart racing. She had never allowed herself to believe that love could be this simple, this pure. Her size, her strength, everything that had once made her feel like a burden, seemed insignificant in the face of what she was beginning to feel for Liam. The love she had always longed for, the kind of love that accepted her flaws and all, was standing right in front of her. She reached out, her massive hand trembling slightly as she brushed a strand of hair from Liam's face. He didn't pull away. Instead, he met her gaze with a quiet trust that made her heart ache. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Scared that I'll hurt you. That I'll be too much." Liam stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her wrist. "Zara, you're never too much for me. I don't want you to change. I just want you to be with me." Zara's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her emotions. The fear, the doubt, the loneliness, it all came crashing down in a rush. But it wasn't a weight that crushed her. It was a weight that she could finally share with someone who would carry it with her instead of turning away. "I don't know what the future holds," Zara said, her voice trembling. "But I know that I want you in it. I don't want to be alone anymore." Liam smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made her chest tighten. "You don't have to be alone, Zara, not ever again." For a moment they stood there in silence, the world around them fading away as they shared this quiet understanding. The forest, the tribe, the doubts, all of it seemed far away. In this moment there was only Liam and Zara, and it felt like home. Zara took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling with the weight of everything she had just admitted. She had always been afraid of being too much, of being too different. But now she realized that those things didn't have to be weaknesses. They could be strengths, and with Liam by her side, she felt like she could face anything. "Let's go somewhere far away," Zara said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "Somewhere we can be together without fear, without judgment." Liam looked up at her, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Where do you want to go?" Zara smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Anywhere, everywhere, as long as I'm with you." And in that moment, everything changed. Zara knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and people who wouldn't understand. But with Liam by her side, she felt like she could face them all. He had shown her that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about accepting each other, flaws and all, and she was ready to accept him, ready to let him into her world just as he had let her into his. Zara took Liam's hand gently in her own, her large fingers wrapping around his small hand with care. She felt his warmth against her skin, a reminder that no matter how different they were together, and that was enough. As they walked away from the clearing, the sun rising higher in the sky, Zara felt a sense of peace she had never known before. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was walking alone. And that was more than enough. The days passed in a steady rhythm, each one feeling more like a promise than the last. Zara had never been someone to enjoy the passage of time. She had spent too many years watching the world around her, feeling like she didn't belong, like she was too different to be part of anything. But with Liam, time didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like something to cherish. They had found a place far from the city, far from the noise and the expectations of Zara's people. It was a quiet place, nestled between rolling hills and a wide, peaceful river. The air here smelled of fresh earth and pine, and the sound of the water flowing over the rocks brought a calmness to Zara's soul. She had never imagined that something so simple could bring her peace, but it did. Every day the world felt a little less overwhelming, and she felt a little more at home. Liam had helped her build a small shelter near the riverbank. It wasn't much, just a simple hut made from wood and leaves, but it was theirs. It was a place where they could be together without fear, without worrying about what others thought of them. For the first time in Zara's life, she didn't feel like a giant out of place. She felt like she belonged. The mornings were her favorite. She would wake up before the sun, watching the sky turn from dark blue to light pink as the day began. The silence in the early hours was comforting. Liam would wake up shortly after her, stretching and yawning as he made his way over to the fire pit to start the morning coffee. Zara would sit by the river, her legs stretched out in front of her, watching the water move. She didn't need to say anything. They didn't need words in those quiet moments. Zara had always been afraid of silence, thinking it meant she was alone. But now the silence felt different. It felt peaceful, like the world wasn't rushing around them, like there was no need to hurry. There was no judgment here, no expectations. Just the two of them learning to live together, learning to love each other without fear. One morning, as Zara watched the sun rise over the hills, she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know it was Liam. She could hear the soft crunch of the grass beneath his feet, the familiar sound that had become a comfort to her. She smiled to herself, not turning around yet. It felt right, this quiet connection. "Good morning," Liam said, his voice warm and steady as always. Zara turned and smiled, her heart swelling at the sight of him. He was wearing a simple shirt and pants, his hair still messy from sleep. But to her, he looked perfect. She had never thought someone so small could fill her heart so completely. But every day, Liam surprised her. He had a way of making her feel seen, making her feel like she wasn't just a giant. She was Zara, and that was enough. "Good morning," she replied, her voice soft but full of meaning. Liam walked over and sat down beside her, his hand reaching for hers. His fingers were small, but the way he held her hand felt like he was holding the world. Zara squeezed his hand gently, and they sat in silence for a while, watching the sky brighten with the first light of day. "I was thinking," Liam began after a few moments, his voice breaking the silence. "What do you want to do today?" Zara turned her head to look at him. His eyes were bright, full of curiosity and wonder. It made her smile. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe we can explore more of the forest or find a place to sit by the river. I don't need much, just being here with you is enough." Liam nodded, his gaze never leaving her. "I like that idea. Let's just enjoy today. Let's not worry about tomorrow." Zara felt her heart swell at his words. He had never asked her to change. He had never asked her to fit into a world that wasn't built for her. He had simply accepted her, all of her, from the very beginning. And in return, she had done the same for him. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when fear crept in and tried to take hold. But they had always faced those moments together, and that made everything else seem small in comparison. The day passed slowly, just as they had planned. They wandered through the forest, exploring new places they had never seen before. Zara was careful not to tread too heavily, aware of how much space her body took up in the world. But with Liam by her side, she didn't mind so much. She had always been afraid of being too much, but now, with him, she felt like she was just enough. She didn't need to shrink herself. She didn't need to hide. She could be herself, and that was enough. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the landscape, Zara and Liam found a spot by the river. The water shimmered in the fading light, and the sound of it flowing over the rocks was soothing. They sat side by side, their hands intertwined, as they watched the sky turn pink and purple with the last light of day. The stars began to appear one by one, twinkling overhead. Zara leaned her head against Liam's shoulder, her heart full of peace. She had never thought she could feel this way. She had spent so much of her life alone, so much of it trying to fit into a world that didn't want her. But now she felt like she had found her place. It wasn't in the city, it wasn't with her people. It was here with Liam in this quiet, peaceful corner of the world. It was enough. "I never thought I would find this," Zara said softly, her voice full of wonder. "I never thought I could be happy, not like this." Liam smiled down at her, his eyes full of affection. "You deserve all of this, Zara. You deserve to be happy. You just had to believe it." Zara closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her. She had spent so long doubting herself, wondering if she would ever find a place where she belonged. But now, with Liam, she knew she had found it. She had found her home. "I don't need anything else," Zara whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't need to be anything but me, and with you, that's enough." Liam gently squeezed her hand. "That's all I need, too." They sat in silence as the night deepened around them, the stars above them shining brightly. For the first time in her life, Zara felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She wasn't too much. She wasn't too different. She was enough. And in that moment, she knew that with Liam by her side, nothing else mattered.